Hello and welcome to a Hope in Darkness Q&A session. I'm Becky Bruce and I'm joined by Josh Holt. Obviously, both of us remote at this point because global pandemic, what are you going to do? Josh, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Happy to be here.
Yeah, good to see your face after it feels like it's been a
I
year
know.
since we did all the recording sessions.
It's been since what? Last one was in January, right before everything hit, I think.
Yeah. We had people have asked me this before. Whether I had to try and do a lot of our recording by Zoom or over the phone or whatever because of the pandemic. We had actually just finished all of our in-person recording sessions right before everything kind of hit and they closed the schools. So
Yeah.
lucky for us, I had everything I needed. Full disclosure though, most of the episodes I actually recorded in a closet in my house.
I
So
remember you telling me that, and I
yeah,
laughed.
yeah. And to be fair, just so people don't think that, anybody can go record in a closet, I do have some really nice recording equipment. But my husband's sweaters made it really nice that I had some soundproofing, so it kind of worked.
Listen really carefully. You can hear my son in the background.
No, he was under penalty of grounding permanently if he made any noise. So, Speaking of kids, though, one of the things that comes out in episode 12 that we just wrapped and launched this past week is kind of an update on how you and your wife and your kids are doing. So
Yeah.
why don't we start there? How are the girls doing now that this has been a while and they've been cooped up at home for a while?
They're doing really good. They don't mind being inside as long as they can watch TV, but we like to limit how much TV they're watching because they can just sit there and just stare at it. You'll say something to them I swear, it's like they have earplugs in, they can't listen to you. And so, other than that, I think they're ready to go to school and be around their friends and play.
Yeah, I think
Oakley just turned 1 a couple days ago. You saw that on Facebook, I
I
saw.
did see that. She's adorable.
She's
Um,
fun.
do the bigger girls like having a little kid sister around?
Oh, they love her. They are so helpful too with her. I can't even begin to explain how helpful they are, but they love just playing with her.
Yeah, and I think when we talked to your dad when we did that recording session, he told us that you were an early walker. And so I was really amused to see that Oakley was also kind of an early walker. When did you start walking?
9.5, 10 months.
Yeah, that's
And I started
insane.
walking around 9.
Yeah. Well, good for her. She seems like a happy little kid.
Yeah, she's always smiling. It's hard to get her to laugh, but she's always smiling.
Yeah. Yeah, gotta love that. All right. One question we got from Facebook while we're still waiting for people to trickle in here was what was the first thing that you wanted to do when you got home?
Honestly, the first thing I wanted to do was just be with my family because it had been so long since I had freedom and done anything. I thought a lot about just little things I could do with my family, just like barbecues. While I was there, they had actually gotten a hot tub and a fire pit in the backyard, and they said that was something that helped them through the whole situation because they could sit there in front of the fire pit and just talk and just enjoy the stars and the fire, and that sounded amazing to me.
Yeah, it does sound nice. Whether you've been in prison or not, that sounds nice. We had a lot of stuff that wound up on the cutting room floor. I've said before that, like, I really, the one thing that if I could go back and change, there are some things that I'd love to squeeze in that I just wasn't able to because of time and editing and, story flow and that kind of thing. So bonus for you, you're working on a book. But is there something that I had to leave out that you really wish I had gotten in?
Oh, that's too hard to choose, to pick and choose something. 2 years. You could think 2 years in a prison compared to 12 podcasts of upwards of 35 minutes. It's hard. It's hard
Yeah.
for someone like you that did a great job, but you're just skimming right off the top.
Yeah, it was really hard, I gotta say. I'll tell you one thing that I wish I'd been able to get in. If this helps you, maybe you can help me tell the story here. I really wish I had gotten in some more of the prison side hustle stuff that you guys did.
I've actually been told that quite a bit. It's like, I
Yeah,
want to hear what you did in there. How
yeah.
you
So talk to
pass
me
your
about your
time by.
prison side hustles.
Well, it was kind of funny because there inside the prison, you had to pay for everything, just like I said. Water, to sleep, to have visits, to be with your wife, anything that you wanted at all, you had to pay for while you were in there. Even haircuts, you had to pay for those. And so everyone had to have some type of way to pay for stuff. A lot of people had a spouse that was outside of the prison, but mainly it was the men that were inside and the women that were out. And they had kids they had to watch, and so it was really hard for them, and they just didn't have a way to make money. And so a lot of people actually sold different things like cigarettes, other things that were considered contraband, alcohol, drugs, that type of stuff. And the funny thing that I always noticed was people would always ask for a lighter. They'd go door to door. Hey, you got a lighter? Hey, you got a lighter? And then people would get all upset, like, oh my gosh, yes, sir, use it real quick. And I turned to one of my friends and said, why does no one sell lighters? Like, everyone here smokes. I swear, every single person in this prison smokes, and no one sells lighters. And they're like, yeah, I don't know. And so I remember texting my mother-in-law, and I said, can you bring me like 2 boxes of lighters? And she sent me just this emoji of like, what? Like, why do you want lighters? And so she brought me lighters, and then when I told her my plan was to sell stuff, she brought me just a couple boxes of juices as well, because people during the visits, they would always have water bottles there, but they wouldn't always have something to drink other than just water. And so they'd like to put one of those juice packets in a 2-liter bottle of whatever it was, of the water, and then they'd have something nice to drink. And so I started selling those 2 things, and it did awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't enough, I think, for you to have made a living supporting yourself.
No.
But like you said, you did have to pay for pretty much everything you had. So let's talk a little bit about that. So what types of things did you have to pay for that people might be surprised to hear about?
Well, water, for instance, those 5-gallon blue jugs of water, I'd have to pay for that, and they'd come every Monday and Wednesday. So you'd have to pay for a new bottle, and it was basically like 2,400 bolivares in order to buy one, and I sold a lighter at like 500 bolivares, and so it was just working your way up to that. The other thing that you'd have to pay for would be anything that you would go around and buy from other people. I remember my wife and I would always buy these cakes that someone's mom would make, and she would actually take an order one visit and then come back the next visit and just pass them out to people. And they were the most delicious little cakes, or tres leches. That's kind of like a milk cake. And so we used my money a lot for that type of stuff, haircuts, anything that we needed to pay for on the inside. Since I was the gringo, they didn't make me pay for as much stuff as they made other people pay for. Like, for instance, just being able to go and have a visit. I didn't have to pay for that.
I think that's probably an important point we should talk a little bit about, because it's something that I wish I'd been able to explain a little bit better in the podcast too, is that whatever you're picturing when you think about a prison in the United States, you just need to forget that.
Prison Break. I've explained that before.
Yeah.
All the people that have seen Prison Break have seen kind of how it's like open and on the inside. Well, a lot of the prisons in Venezuela are exactly that way. They have just different things in their churches, zoos. I've heard a lot of crazy stuff. They have parties every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. People actually come in and stay all weekend. Mine was kind of a mix of both a regular prison and that, in the sense of depending on who you were and where you were in the line of the prison, you could basically just have your door open 24/7, walk around, talk, have fun, play games. If you were one of the common prisoners, they were always locked up in their room. Our door, so for the first half, I was always locked up 100%. The last half, it was off and on, but mainly our door was free so that the political prisoners that I was with, Carlos, Capi, they would be able to just use a knife and just pop it open and then walk wherever they wanted to.
Yeah, I guess that's kind of what I was trying to get at, is that, like, this is a prison unlike most prison. If you're picturing a prison movie, and you're picturing, dudes behind bars. Yeah, some of that is true. But there's also a lot of element of intense corruption
Yeah.
and who's really running this place, right? Like
Hmm.
it's just chaotic.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of people are like, well, I mean, if you're able to walk around, I wasn't allowed to be outside. I always had to, even though it was open, I could, go up and warm up my food for a second or whatever it was, but I always had to be in the room. I couldn't just walk around. But they thought since I had TV in there and I had a phone, like how bad could it be? You're just sitting on your bed the whole time. It's like, well, have any of you ever tried to just sit and watch TV? I mean, heck, we've seen what it was like just 2 weeks after the pandemic started, and everyone was just locked in their house with their family and with a phone and a TV, and everyone started going crazy and they couldn't handle it. So imagine 2 years of that. It really does wear on you.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's go back way to the beginning here. Sometimes people will ask me, how I got the idea for the podcast. And so I just want to clarify that, first of all, it was not my idea. I would love to take credit for that, but it wasn't. So why don't you talk to me a little bit about how you got the idea to approach KSL to begin with?
Well, I've been doing a bunch of conferences. I think I've done upwards of 20 to 25 conferences. And I went to school with a guy whose name is Dallas, sorry. And he was an SBO in our school. And so he pretty much knew everyone in the school. And he knew of my story. And so when I got back and started doing some things, he got a hold of me and he said, "Hey, I work at KSL and wanted to talk to you about, maybe doing a podcast." And I said, "I'd love to do a podcast. I was thinking about doing one." And he said, "Well, let me talk to some people and see what we can do." And I said, "All right, sounds good." And then that's when we set up a interview with you and Cheryl and him. And I think it went really well. We had a lot of great ideas. And then from there, it was just, okay, let's get the wheels turning and seeing what we can do and see what we can come up with. And we have a lot of ideas and a lot of things. I think we still kind of want to get everything into Spanish, which I know there's tons of people that are just like, "I can't understand this. I need it in Spanish." And it's like, well, you gotta wait. We're trying. That's in the works, hopefully.
It's a process for sure.
So,
I think one of the things that kind of, when I really think about this past year, right, one of the things that really kind of blows me away is the idea that we had that conversation, that initial sit down meeting, just barely over a year ago. And
crazy.
yeah,
Time flew, didn't it?
at the time it was like, man, this is going to take forever to put together. And it felt like it took forever to put together. But now looking back on it, it's like, I swear that was 5 minutes ago. Right?
Yeah. And at times it was like we had these little months in between things because we were just so busy with everything. Probably mainly me more than it was you, because working construction, during the summertime, that's when you work 12 to 15 hours a day. But we got it done. It was hard, but we got it done. We recorded way more than what we put out.
Yeah. And that's
a lot of people don't realize.
I think that would probably surprise people how much raw tape I have, just from our conversations, but also all the people that we talked to. Every single person that you heard, even, a short comment from in the podcast, Josh and I probably spent a good hour recording to make that happen. Yeah.
Well, we had Wilmer. That wasn't really in there because the recording was just so bad. Senator Hatch, we actually didn't even have his recording in there.
Yeah, I know. It's a similar situation. Both Wilmer and Senator Hatch were people that we had to record on the phone. Wilmer's was actually, to a certain extent, worse than Senator Hatch's, but they were both just such hard quality when it came to phone recording that we had to make a judgment call at the end. And we realized, for Senator Hatch anyway, that we had a lot of his archived voice from different news events, from, he put out a ton of YouTube videos during the 2 years that you were gone. And so we were able to use some of those to stand in for what he told us on tape. The one thing, though, speaking of Senator Hatch, the one thing I really wish I'd been able to clean up enough for people to hear and have it not be like painful to try and figure out what he said. He read out loud to you and me on that phone call a letter that he had sent you while he was in prison. And it was one of two moments that I distinctly remember that you kind of had to collect yourself afterwards.
Yeah.
That letter was just so touching. And so I will put the letter back on our Facebook page when we're done with this conversation, just so people can read what he had to say. It was a really heartfelt letter that he wrote you that then you received when Caleb McCary, the Senate staffer, came to visit you in prison in February of 2018.
And speaking of which, that was the other one that really made me choke up. I
Yeah.
think I actually had to stop for like 10 minutes because
Yeah, you needed a minute.
it was hard. Out of everything, I've been able to talk about my entire story fine for the entire time I've been home. And yeah, there are parts that I get choked up in when I talk about Tammy and the things that she had to go through. That really chokes me up. But to hear Caleb talk about the process of actually us getting our freedom and hearing in his own words that he thought that we were basically, I think his words were burnt to crisp.
Mm-hmm.
It was just so hard to take, and it brought all those feelings back into me of just not having any hope, having all my hope just drained from me, and that is the worst feeling I think anyone can ever have
Yeah.
in their entire life.
Yeah, there's speaking of that hope, I think there was a moment when you were describing to me the process of just flying home, and that it really didn't seem real to you until you heard the pilot say, "We're in the United States airspace."
Yeah.
And you said in the podcast, you said something like, "I have goosebumps right now." I can verify you actually did. I could see them. I can verify that. Was that the moment? Am I right? Is that the moment that it really started to feel real to you? Like, okay, they can't take it back now.
Yeah. To be honest, I think it was, I'm home. Like, just to hear that you've arrived into the airspace and you can see the United States land, like just that feeling right there and seeing like, okay, there's freedom. And I think that's a lot of stuff that people are losing right now, to tell you the truth. And I've talked to a bunch of friends about this and about just the situation and everything that's going on. Is until you've lost your freedom, you don't understand what your freedom truly is. And I think that's something that is probably impossible for someone to understand unless they've gone through a similar situation of where they've lost their freedom completely. And it doesn't mean that you have to be, held hostage abroad. It could be just like, what we talked about in some of the episodes where you're in an abusive relationship
Mm-hmm.
and you can't leave that relationship and you feel your freedom just dwindling every single day and there's nothing that you can do. And when you have that and it's lost and it's been lost for a while and then something happens to where all of a sudden you get your freedom back and you just feel happiness and know that you are allowed to do whatever it is that you want to do, the feeling of gratitude that's within you is just unexplainable.
Something that really has struck me, and I've heard other people mention this too, is hearing you and Tammy speak about what happened to you now. Neither one of you sound bitter or negative for the 2 years that you lost. Not that horrible things didn't happen, they did.
Mm-hmm.
But what I get from both of you is just this sense of, you know what, we're alive. We made it.
Yeah.
How do you get from being trapped and hopeless to the place where you can look back on those 2 years and be like, I'm just glad I'm alive?
Well, I think first I want to make sure that everyone knows that even though we seem happy all the time, we still have, little things that happen to us that we have to still overcome. In fact, actually, before I got on this chat with you, Becky, I was talking to Tammy, and she was talking to me about a dream that she had last night about being in the Sabine. And she says, I don't know why it always happens. I go to sleep and I'm happy, but I always have these weird dreams. And she said, she got her hand out and she said, I was sleeping and I saw him grabbing my hand and holding my finger out and putting it into the pencil sharpener. And I just remember myself screaming and I woke up. And it's those types of things where we don't really have a whole lot of PTSD, but we have those moments to where we fall into something, into just a memory. I've had those types of dreams where just something that happened and I just wake up like, okay, no, I'm not there anymore. But to be honest, Becky, you just have to move on. It's hard. It's just like losing a loved one. You're sad and you're going to be really sad for a month, 2 months, maybe a year. But eventually you just kind of have to move on. And
Yeah.
it's sad to say that. It honestly is, because we love that person. But at the same time, it's like, okay, they're gone. We love them, but let's just cherish their memory.
Mhm.
Let's look at the positive that that person brought into my life, instead of the negative thoughts and feelings about that person not being in my life. Because I can tell you right now, there are hundreds of things that I could think negatively about losing my mom, not having my mom here, not having my mom with Oakley. I could think of plenty of things, but it doesn't help. It doesn't bring me happiness, and it doesn't uplift me or those people around me. And so we've really had to put it in our minds, and we have to talk quite a bit when one of us, gets down, about everything we have to be grateful for. And I think
Help
that that's
kind
the
of
key.
counting your blessings.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can we talk about your mom a little bit?
Yeah.
Without exception, every single person that we interviewed pointed to your mom as this driving factor behind your freedom. Basically, the idea, even Mia Love said this, that, she was just so persistent that kids at her hatch couldn't ignore her, right? Like, not that they would have, but they just couldn't. Like, they had to listen to this woman and do everything they could to help her. Caleb said to us, when she left his office, you know what? I'm going to do everything I can to help that woman get her son back. Um, what a remarkable person to have touched so many people who, otherwise would have no reason to know each other. But she made an impact on everybody involved with this story.
Yeah. And kind of ironic too that she passed away from an enlarged heart.
Yeah.
It means that her heart was so big that everyone could feel it.
Yeah.
Uh, she was a remarkable person. She honestly was. Every single person that she would be around would just be able to feel her love for them. And that's what she was. She was a person that was just willing to love everyone. I can even say that there were people out there that did wrong things to her. And it would take her a minute to get over it. But then later on, she would be their friend, and she would help them through their issues and their problems. And to me, I was like, wow, how can someone, do that? Have someone that did something horrible to them, but then turn around and be like, you know what? I'm going to love my neighbor because I know that's what I need to do. And that's what brings me happiness. And that's exactly who she was.
Where did the Mama Bear nickname come from? Is it just from the bear hugs?
From the bear hugs and her, like that's what she always say, I'm Mama Bear. And so that's just where it always came from. But she gave the best hugs in the world.
Yeah. We do have a question from Megan, who wanted to know, hopefully this is not too personal a question, but have either of you gone to counseling to process what you've been through?
We both went to counseling. I think we went like maybe upwards of 3 or 4 times when we got back, but we didn't see any improvements or anything that was helping us. And to be honest, when we first got back, we had no money, and so it was just expensive. And we were just like, we feel like this was pointless. We feel like we're fine. We feel like that we can get over the little things that we do have, and seemed that we worked out.
One thing you said to me kind of early on is that you sort of realized when you were doing the debriefing process with our government after you came home at, I believe, at Walter Reed.
Yeah.
You said that was kind of the moment where you realized telling your story was helpful to you.
Yeah, and it is, yeah. And honestly, I've heard that from a lot of different people that talk about the importance of just telling someone 100% what you had to go through, any type of situation that you had to go through, and just to get that off of your chest. And I think it helps us realize that, yeah, that was real. That was something that I went through. But hey, I'm okay. I lived, and here I am, and I've got a positive future ahead of me. I think I'm not a psychiatrist or anything, but personally, I think that that's why telling your story and debriefing in a way is helpful.
Yeah. We have a couple more questions here. One that we get a lot is whether you had any long-term health problems as a result of your time, shall we say, in Venezuela. And I can vouch for some of this. There was one recording session in particular, you had some intense tooth pain left over from what I can only describe as a botched prison dental job. So, what else has been going on? Are you physically okay? Do you have lingering impacts from having been locked up?
um, it was hard just when we got home. I mean, I blew up pretty quick. I got pretty big, so I've been dieting quite a bit. I got to get it back down. But other than that, um, oh, I do remember what I was gonna say to someone on Facebook. So when you're laying on a bed for 2 years straight, you don't realize that does, that's gonna have a huge impact on your working life, but it does. Your muscles are a lot a lot less. You're not as strong as what you used to be, basically. And when I first got back, I started working at the airport, doing some electrical work. And I went from walking maybe, I don't know, let's say 500 steps a day to walking almost 30,000 steps a day. And I would get the most horrible blisters on my feet. And everyone there would be like, "Oh, you just have soft prison feet, man." And it was kind of the joke between me and all of my coworkers. And it's just that type of stuff that I think has really affected us physically. Is just the fact of being locked away for a long time, not being able to do anything, and just sitting there. Tammy's got a lot of problems with her wrists, um, just from where she works. And other than that, I wouldn't say that there's a whole lot. I mean, yeah, our teeth, both of us, affected us a lot. But other than that, I think we're basically getting back to normal. Tammy's shoulder's doing a lot better now because she was able to do physical therapy for quite a while.
Good, good. I got to tell you, for me, one of the hardest parts of all of our recording sessions, and you told me a lot of hard things to listen to, but the one that really just like I still kind of twitch a little bit thinking about is when you were describing the dental work that they did to you in prison. I just, um, to our listeners, you're welcome. We edited that way down. It's so much worse than what you heard. So much worse.
We should have left the dirty stuff in there for them.
If I get brave enough at some point, I may do like a video with some audio clips of the full description. It was hard. I gotta admit that. Uh, do you feel any guilt for having gone to Venezuela at the beginning of all of this?
No, I don't think I have a reason to have guilt. Well, I mean, other than the fact that my family suffered, I guess you could say I should fit. Maybe some people out there would say I should feel guilty about that. But honestly, I mean, there were no types of warning from the State Department saying, "Hey, don't go over to Venezuela." There are many, many, many countries out there that are dangerous and that people probably shouldn't go to, but Americans go everywhere. We want to travel the world. And not only did I always want to go to Venezuela just to see the beaches there because the beaches were amazing. At least that's what I'm told because I didn't get able to see any. But I had a family there that was waiting for me. And so for me, it was like, yeah, why not? We know where we can be. We know where we shouldn't be. I had someone that was native to that area, and she knew exactly how to protect me. The only thing that she didn't know was that those bad people were going to come into our house.
And that's another question I get occasionally. I feel like anybody who's ever met you would immediately go, oh, okay, this guy's not a spy, right? Um, it's just the idea of James Bond living in Riverton, Utah is a little bit hard to put together in your head.
Is it, Becky? Is it?
Well, well,
Maybe that's our backup plan.
but I want to give you the chance to say it and debunk it for anybody who still has that lingering question in their mind. Is any part of what the police there said about you true?
No. I have talked about and preached about my innocence from day one, and I will continue to do that to the day. The things that were said about me, the charges that were placed upon myself and my wife were ridiculous. I have no idea how you could get an AK-47 and a grenade and all the other stuff through an airport in the United States, let alone here. And without having money, how do you purchase those types of things? It's just ridiculous. It's ridiculous that 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 was even said about me, to tell you the truth. Just like you said, the people that know me, that have grown up with me, know that none of that stuff that was ever said about me was true. The only thing that they did say that was true was that I almost have my pilot's license. I'm like 3 to 5 hours away from having my pilot's license. And so they turned that into me being a military pilot. So that's
Working on
only thing remotely close.
Well, I really appreciated, we had a conversation with your friend Gabo.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't remember which one of you asked the other, but the question was asked, have you ever seen that money from the CIA? Did you ever get your check?
I get, and that's now the joke between both of us, huh?
Yeah.
Every time we're texting, you always ask me, "So, has that check come yet?"
Has
Not
that
yet.
cleared yet from the CIA? Dang it.
Still waiting for it.
Yeah. Oddly enough, I've had a few people reach out to me and want to know if I am somehow in cahoots with this narrative of, you're a spy and I'm helping cover it up. And I have not gotten my check from the CIA yet either. So just want to
You're
debunk
kidding. You're kidding.
No. Um, let's see. Are you still in touch with people like Gabo, those prisoners that you made friends with when you were in prison?
Yeah, I am. There's another young man whose name is Juancito. That's what we call him. He was 14 when they grabbed him, and he's been there ever since then. He should have been freed a long time ago, but they won't let him go. And it's hard. It's hard listening to what they have to go through, the way things have changed, um, and just knowing the people that are in there that are innocent that have to just stay there. I know right now there are 2 Green Berets that are currently stuck, and I talked to you about this, in Venezuela in the exact same cell that I was in. And my wife and I are doing all that we can right now to basically get in contact and get them the things that they need. I know that their case is very, very secretive. I know that the government's not going to help with them because um, what they were trying to do to help the Venezuelan people were technically against the laws in Venezuela, of course, because they were trying to overthrow the government and get a true democracy back into Venezuela.
Which
But
we should clarify is assuming that any of those accusations are true. We don't actually know.
yeah, we don't know. I've had contact with their family as well, but this whole situation and these things, I think, should just shed a light into people's eyes that what we watch in Hollywood isn't just something that someone comes up with in their mind, but sadly, they're true stories of people's lives sometimes that were ruined or destroyed because of the actions of other people. And a lot of people have asked me that type of question actually before, where they say, hey, are you still LDS? Do you still believe in God? And I say, well, of course. I'm always going to believe in that. And they said, well, even after everything you've been through, even after all that horrible stuff that was done to you and your wife, and I just kind of look at them and I ask them, I say, what is the one thing that you can think of that God gave every single person in this world? And they say, I don't know. And I said, it's the ability to act, the ability to choose for yourself. And sadly, the way we use that power, it affects other people. Our agency affects not only ourselves, but it affects our children, our parents, and even strangers. And so, yeah, for a moment, I fought with that while I was in prison. But overall, I know that God was only allowing other people to use their agency, and that agency sadly affected me negatively. But here I am now, and I can move forward. And there's a lot of people out there that will have to go through similar situations, not where they're locked up abroad, but where someone's agency is going to affect them negatively.
Yeah. I think one thing that I walked away from having listened to you for as much as we did, one of the things that I kind of took away from that was that we really need to take a long, hard look at how we treat the people that we accuse of crimes. Whether they're guilty or innocent is not the issue. The issue is, how do we treat people in custody, people in prison in this country, in Venezuela, anywhere? And are we providing them the best care that we can? If we have taken away their rights, are we doing everything that we can to protect what rights they have left? What would you say to that?
It's interesting because I've actually thought a lot about that. And one of the places that I have actually gone to speak at was actually the women's prison in Draper. And I would say out of all the ones that I've gone to, that is definitely one of the top 3 that I've liked going to and talking to people. It was amazing to talk to those women and just to see the connection between what I went through and what they have to go through. Because maybe they did do something wrong, maybe they didn't. We never know, but we all know what it feels like to be locked up like an animal. And I know that there are bad people that do bad things, but at the same time, I don't know that I believe that it's fair to just lock someone up in a cage for 23 hours out of the day.
Yeah.
I'm not in a situation or in a position where I can dictate and say, hey, this shouldn't be this way, this shouldn't be that way, but I know what it's like, and I can tell people what it's like, and I can honestly say that being locked up in a cage for a year, 2 years, 10 years, 15 years, it's not going to change the person that person was when they got in there. If anything, it's going to make it worse.
Yeah. Well, that reminds me a little bit too. Tammy said, and this was in Spanish, so in the podcast you hear my good friend Rebecca Cressman translating this. She described there as almost kind of being a class divide between the political prisoners and the common prisoners at El Helicoide. But what Tammy said that really struck me was that she felt like that the common prisoners were almost treated like animals. Would you say that was true?
Honestly. And there's times, so there's a point, how do I explain this? And especially if you don't like hearing things, then put it on mute for a second or something like that. But this is to share a story about basically that. When you first get in there, and especially if you're what's considered a common prisoner, you get locked up. And for the first month, 2 months, they try to break you. They do everything they can. And there was a bathroom, an old bathroom that honestly, there's only just one little toilet in there, no running water or anything. And they locked up 15 people in this little tiny bathroom for a month and a half. No showers. All they do was slide the food under the door. They had one little tiny toilet in there that they could all use, and they had to wait for a bucket of water so they could flush it down. And every time you walked past that door, the smell that would come from underneath the door was just horrible. And just thinking that a human being could treat another human being that way without feeling remorse, it doesn't register in my brain how someone could do that. And to see their faces, I remember one time I was walking up to go get my hair cut, and they had the door open, and they were kind of shocked. They kind of looked around and saw me, and they were kind of shocked that I was out. And I kind of just looked in there, and I just saw just the sadness on these people's face, the sadness and probably honestly just the disgust and the feeling of dirtiness that they had all over them. And I remember I hadn't felt that sad in a long time.
Yeah, I can't imagine how difficult it would be to find hope in a situation like that. You mentioned that particular cell. I know Tammy was in a room with about 30 other women at the beginning. But you described to me another cell where there was like upwards of 50 people shoehorned into this space, right?
Oh yeah.
I mean,
that's where all of them were. And it was actually upwards of 80. And the size of the room was like your living room, maybe a little bit bigger.
I mean,
well, not your living room, but like a living room.
Think for a second though about that's a room with no bathroom, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a room with no seating. Where do people sit? Where do they lay down and sleep? Do they have
literally
shifts? Right?
They're all over the floor.
Yeah.
They got these little tiny foam pads basically, and you walk by and you just see them all just laid all over the floor.
Yeah.
It's
We do have a question from Christy. She wanted to know, will you ever return to Venezuela to visit your wife's family? I guess we should first clarify, most of Tammy's family is no longer in Venezuela. Is that correct?
Yeah, the only ones that are in Venezuela currently would be Marian's dad and his family, and her mom. Her grandma, Tammy's grandma. Everyone else is in Ecuador. We have a lot of communication with them. Tammy was actually planning on going down to Ecuador with Oakley right before the pandemic hit. I gave her that as a Christmas present. And so she was waiting until April because her little niece was turning 15, and the quinceañera is really big for them. And so that's why she ended up waiting until April to go. And then that's when, as we all know, it hit really heavily in March, and she had to stop. And so that's kind of in her plans, is to try to go there and visit her family when everything dies down and gets better. And so we'll see if that happens. As for me, I don't know. I've talked to her about it, and I was like, I just don't know. I don't think I can go.
Would you consider Ecuador?
Well, yeah, it's Ecuador. That's where she was planning on going, was Ecuador.
Yeah.
And her grandma would actually go to Ecuador as well, so they could all meet up. I've always wanted to go to Ecuador, to Mexico, just those, Costa Rica. I've always wanted to go there as well. But I don't know. There's just that feeling, back in my heart that I'm just like, don't go, don't do it. You don't know what's going to happen.
Do you remember what Senator Hatch said to you when we talked to him about, he hopes you can go someday, but...
Oh, yeah, he said that he hopes that the democracy will soon be returning to Venezuela, and it'll be so great that you can return and visit. And I said, no, Senator Hatch, I don't. I don't ever want to go back to Venezuela. And he goes, no, but honestly, Josh, I hope you do. I hope that you can go back there. And I said, well, okay, thanks.
We have a comment. This is not so much a question, but I thought I'd like for you to hear this. This is from a lady named Dolly. She says, I love your podcast, and I'm simply amazed with the hardships you and your wife have endured. My daughter and I sat next to you in Costco at the food court soon after you came home. I wanted to jump up and hug you both, but my daughter felt you needed privacy. We love your family and cheer you on for surviving.
I don't know what it is about Costco, but everyone knows me in Costco. I almost feel like there was a sign just in my picture as soon as you walked into Costco that everyone knew who I was, because it's like any stores I go into, I get noticed quite a bit in other stores as well, but every time I go to Costco, there's always one or two people that know me or recognize me. So I think that's funny.
Your dad also added, don't go.
Don't go.
Thanks, Jason.
and happy birthday, Dad.
Is it your dad's birthday?
Yeah, he just turned old age yesterday.
Well, I don't know what age old enough to know better is yet, but when you get there, let me know, because I want to know what that's like.
Well, I'm not going to tell you what it is, Becky, just in case we go to it.
You also have Gabriella wanted to know, a 14-year-old in an adult prison to go back to, I think you said his name was Juancito.
Yeah.
So were there people underage at El Alacuete?
Yeah, there were a good handful of them. And they're just treating them like a normal human being. Normal adult, sorry.
Yeah. Let's see. I can't think of anything else that I wanted to ask you. Is there anything else that you wanted to address before we wrap it up here? Anything that, people have been asking you about the podcast?
Not really. I get all different types of questions, and I feel like we've answered a lot of people's questions.
Yeah.
I don't ever. You can always go onto our Facebook page and ask a question there. And I don't get on Facebook often, but if Becky sees one, she'll always send me a text and hey, someone asked you a question, and so I can always go and answer it. I don't have a problem with that. A lot of people I noticed are very nervous to ask me questions. My next door neighbor kind of walked up and was like, so I've been listening to your podcast. And you see he's kind of like beating around the bush a little bit, trying to figure out how to ask me the question. Like, you can ask me anything you want. And so I think that's my favorite thing, is when people kind of know who I am, or they just figured it out. I get a barbecue with all my neighborhood on Sunday, and when in my neighborhood, someone finally realized who I was and what I'd been through. And his face was just like this the entire time. And I kept seeing him on his phone and looking up at me, looking like this. And his wife's like, "Don't ask him questions." I was like, "No, you're fine."
It
So
was very fun for me when you would come to visit KSL Broadcast House, and there would be that moment of recognition from somebody as we walked through the hallway, where they were like, they knew you, but they couldn't quite figure out how they knew you. And then that moment of, that's how I know you.
yeah, it's the greatest, I say.
Yeah. All right. Well, then my last question for you is, what's next for you? I know you're working on a book. What else is going on?
Working on a book, waiting for the pandemic to simmer down so I can start speaking again. I love going and talking at conferences and at people's gatherings for their work. I've done quite a bit of that, and just basically trying to share my my story and hoping that it blesses people's lives to allow them to get over or get through whatever it is that they're going through. I feel like if I can do that and I can help people, get through the hard experiences that they're going through, that it'll all be worth it.
I don't have any more questions, but I do have one last comment I wanted to share with you because I think it'll resonate. This is from somebody named Becky. I prayed for you every day, and I am so happy that you are now safe. You are such an example for everyone to follow. Even though you had the worst things done to you, you still hold your faith and press forward.
Well, thank you, Becky.
Yeah. All right. Well, we can leave it there. We probably will do another Q&A video at some point once more people have had a chance to listen to the finale. But in the meantime, if you do think of questions you want to ask us, you can post them here. You can email us at hopeindarkness@ksl.com. And other than that, thanks so much for listening. And Josh, thank you so much for trusting me to tell your story. It was absolutely my privilege.
Well, we had fun doing it.
Yeah, we did. We did. Thanks, friend.
See ya.